Good time to take a drink.
Yeah, for sure.
You had committee, right?
Today, no. Yeah, we had committee on Tuesday, 9 o'clock. First full oversight committee hearing. It's pretty interesting. I think, Republicans are going to take a pretty aggressive approach at the state's operations.
It's about time.
Yeah, efficiencies, waste, the old cliche, waste, fraud, and abuse, right?
So can you explain just real quick, how is that structured? And,
Sure.
And what actually makes that different than how we've done it, how the House has done that in the past?
Well, I think, if you look at what Speaker Hall has done with the structure of oversight, so he's created the full oversight committee, which has 17 members, big committee. And then he created 6 subcommittees, and those 6 subcommittees are assigned kind of with individual topics, individual issues that arise in government. I wish I had a list of them, but but each of those items are, there's things like weaponization of state government, right? In veterans and in child welfare and food and national or state security, quasi-national security, right? How those things tie together. And each of those topics will be managed within those subcommittee subcommittee committees. But yet, those items, larger items, more important items, more things that are, of a higher profile, will come up to the full oversight committee.
Yeah.
And the full oversight committee will deal with their own issues that maybe are outside of the scope of those 6 subcommittees.
Right. So it sounds like not only is it just a bigger, more robust, oversight process, right? Before we just had the oversight committee, and now we have a structured organization that encompasses multiple levels of oversight of the government, and it actually has teeth now, really relatively compared to how it was in the past.
It does. We have full subpoena power. Like I've said many times, that my hope is we never have to use that subpoena power. But the reality is when you have an $82 billion budget, whether we like to admit it or not, somewhere in that $82 billion, there's something going on
There's problems
that we don't like, right?
Good, bad, indifferent, purposeful, not purposeful. There's problems.
Right. And I think what that subpoena power will do for us is it will allow us, just the fact that we have it, I think it's going to create a scenario that people know we're serious.
Yeah.
Right. We're not just trying to, create Facebook clicks, right? That's not what we're trying to do. We're actually trying to improve the quality of government. I think if you've paid attention, Brian, and I know you have, at the federal level and throughout our country and in the state of Michigan, taxpayers are fed up with government waste. They're just fed up with abuse of their tax dollars and the misuse of their tax dollars. And one of my goals with oversight is that we are going to work to make Michigan a more efficient place.
Right. Well, when you look at government as a whole, whether it's the federal government, state government, local government, the people aren't stupid, right? They know there are problems.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that I hear over and over again is why don't you guys try to do something about it? And there just hasn't been a lot of opportunity. There hasn't been a lot of structure, and there hasn't been a legislative body that really stood up and actually decided, all right, we're actually going to do something about it now. And fortunately, that's where we're at.
Yeah, and I would say this, efficiency and proper use of tax dollars, it's not a Republican-Democrat thing.
Absolutely not.
It's a taxpayer thing. Mm-hmm. And you've been here longer than I, but you realize that, sometimes things go partisan, right?
Yep.
And things get partisan. I would say that as we dig into this stuff and as we expose things, it's going to become less partisan. Right?
Yeah,
because I think right now you have a Senate controlled by the Democrats. What are they going to remain silent on stuff if we start to discover things, or are they going to step forward and join and say, "Wait a minute, this isn't a partisan thing"?
Yeah.
And my hope is, for the sake of the Michigan taxpayer, that they do step forward.
Well, and when you're talking about abuse of tax dollars, like fraudulent abuse of tax dollars that I assume we're going to find, or even if it's not fraudulent, but misuse and misappropriation of tax dollars, like our job, our responsibility is to be good stewards of the dollars that the people of the state entrusted us. And so if that's being taken advantage of by politicians, that Republicans and Democrats alike should get together. And my hope is this doesn't get politicized. And I know you well enough to know that you certainly won't let it become politicized. It's just a matter of...
I think the validity of the Oversight Committee resides in it not becoming political.
Right.
Because the moment it becomes political, and it's clear that it has become political, it loses all of its respect and all of its validity. And then you don't accomplish anything.
Right.
You don't really get to the bottom of what you want to get to. You know, I just had a meeting with House Fiscal, and I thought I was a little bit cloudy on some of the stuff, you know, dealing with House Fiscal, and then I started to dig into it, and it got even cloudier, right? You go,
so explain what House Fiscal Agency is.
They're the financial managers,
right,
essentially, of the dollars that are allocated to be spent for the state. But my gosh, you try to get your arms around that, and it's gigantic.
Essentially, you know? the accounting agency.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, you know, what's really interesting to see, and I don't know that many people have put it together this way yet, but when you combine our oversight committee with our rules committee as we have it set up, the idea is to really go after, number one, with the oversight committee, the past abuses, the past problems that government has created, and then with the rules committee, preventing a further encroachment of government. Because, you know, most people think that government grows the majority through legislative action when it's not. It's through administrative rules and that type of thing. And so when you combine those two things together, it is a really, really powerful approach in managing the government.
Well, there's a giant juggernaut of unelected bureaucrats and bureaucracies that make those rules, as you just mentioned, and they go unchecked a lot of the time. And, you know, with the Oversight Committee, what I think you could see is the discovery of issues and then a summarization of a policy initiative that is going to correct those things. That's my hope and my goal, is that we're able to implement some policies to prevent this. And frankly, my personal position in shrink government, I think we have plenty of dollars to accomplish lots of good things, but I do think they're really poorly spent. They're inefficiently spent. I'm being nice. But yeah, so it's going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting couple of years.
Do you think the governor? Do you think the governor will talk about our oversight committee in state of state?
You know, I don't know that she'll bring it up specifically, but I can say this. I mean, if you've been watching, she's moving towards our policies.
Yep.
She's moved towards. Obviously, we came out with a road funding plan, right? Well, within a few weeks, she came out with her road funding plan, right? You see all of her positions. Maybe reducing refunding fees and things like that on licenses or permits or those kinds of things. We've been yelling that for how long, Brian? I mean,
we've been yelling it for a while because she's now calling on refunding that after jacking it up substantially over the last 2 years.
Correct. And I think there might be some disingenuousness there because that comes out as a public statement at the same time when, you know, they want to raise taxes $3 to $4 billion to pay for roads. So, you know, which one is it? I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting, like, so you mentioned how we came out with our roads plan, which I thought the Speaker Hall and his team did a phenomenal job developing that in a way that we could put $3.1 billion toward roads without increasing taxes. And then all of a sudden you see the governor come out and match the dollar amount, but there's one pretty stark difference. One plan doesn't increase taxes and the other plan increases taxes.
Right. I think that's a pretty big and significant difference.
Right.
And we were talking about, and the important point that anybody that might be listening here watching, we're talking about funding for local roads.
Right.
The roads in your community, the roads in your township. Money going to your road commissions to improve local roads. Sometimes people don't realize that, you know, we took that bond out, right?
Yeah.
But most of that money was frankly spent on highways, right? Not local roads.
Highways that probably weren't in communities in northern Michigan or west Michigan. You know.
Right. So, you know, the state of the state tonight, I think you're going to hear her talk about roads. My hope is that she moves towards our plan, which is let's do this without raising taxes.
Yeah.
46% increase in the budget in the last 6 years. I think there's money there. I think there's money there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
About the different subcommittees on oversight, earlier, weaponization of state government, child welfare system, corporate subsidies and state investments, public health, food security, homeland security and foreign influence, state and local public assistance programs.
Yep.
Yeah, you're not going to remember that. I would.
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
going to remember
I
that.
usually carry my note card to remember all the length of those names. But, you know, weaponization of state government, great example there. You know, when an agency uses their authority to intimidate, you're moving into weaponization, right?
Right.
As opposed to just remember, agencies are supposed to be a service to taxpayers, right? They're supposed to be there to help you.
Right.
And they're morphing into this enforcement agency that does nothing but cause citizens grief.
Right.
By the way, funded by their own tax dollars, right? And it's time to move it back to the people. It's time to take government back and give it to the people.
As a taxpayer, we pay the government for the pleasure of being bullied by the government.
Right, that great line. That's a great line.
So we expect to see roads being talked about.
Yep.
We expect to see the governor coming our way on a lot of our policy priorities. Do you think she's going to bring up the tipped wage issue, or do you think that's over and done with and she wants to put that as far behind her? as
Boy,
she
I don't
can?
know. You know, I mean, I think she might try to take a victory lap on that. She might try to, you know, tout that as a amazingly good thing. You know, and as you and I know, Brian, like it's just better than how bad it would have been. It isn't a good thing, right? It's just
It isn't certainly a plan that you and I would have come up with
Absolutely
and been like, this
not.
is awesome.
No,
But it's substantially better than had we done nothing.
had we done nothing.
which
All
is-
we did is claw back some things that we hoped would never be implemented.
Right.
And we were successfully able to do that. It's still not good,
Yeah,
but, you know.
it's a unique scenario because normally, and I think you'll agree with me on this. Normally, we're in a situation where if we don't do anything, that's better.
Right.
And not this time we were in a scenario where it's like if we don't do anything, it's much worse.
Right.
And it created a dynamic that's just different. So
That's true. Yeah, I said to a couple constituents, trust me, this is never a policy that I would have drafted if I just wanted to institute a
Right,
policy.
right.
Because it's horrible.
Yeah.
It's just an answer to what's coming at us as a freight train. So, you know, I think you might well hear her try to take credit for something that's great, although I don't believe it's great. But that's politics. That's how she operates. I think that's going to happen. You know, I think you could hear her talk about education. I think that's a favorite discussion point that goes on continuously. My problem is that, you know, we're at an all-time funding high for public education, and we're
Yep.
at a all-time educational low for
Yep.
public education.
interesting statistic for you that I'm going to need you to confirm for me if you can. How many school districts do we have in the state of Michigan? It's in the thousands. I want to say 5,300, and I might be way off. But the point is still going to be the same. I thought that'd be a quicker search than it is.
There you go. 539.
Oh, 539, not 5,000.
Yeah, right.
Either way, point's still the same. 539 school districts in the state of Michigan. Guess how many there are in Florida?
I don't know, how many counties are there?
How many are there in Florida?
There we go. No typos that time. In the state of Florida, we have 67.
It's a big difference, right? Like,
9 times.
I mean, think of the amount of money that's tied up in administrative costs in Michigan
Absolutely.
that Florida doesn't have to deal with. That's money
Absolutely.
that could go to the classrooms.
And you know, that's funny because I had a discussion this morning on WJR Radio about this. If you survey individuals about public education, if you even talk to school teachers, they will tell you the number one obstacle they have is the non-educational dollars and non-educational compliance
Right.
that they have to spend money and time on that does nothing to educate a kid in the classroom.
Right.
Right? Now, you can lump into there the difference between 500 and what was it, 69?
Something like that.
Like 539 versus 60 something. It's 8 times more. Every one of them has a superintendent. Every one of them has a superintendent staffing office. And that adds up to a lot of money that's not going directly into the education of kids. you know, I think we rank 41st in the country in education
Right.
out of 50. That isn't very good. Fourth graders are reading at about a 35% level for proficiency, and sixth graders are doing math at about a 40% proficiency when we have an all-time spending. So, you know, if the governor comes out tonight, Bryan, and says, we need more funding for education, I'm going to say, I think that experiment is over. I think we've went down that road of just pouring money at a problem. That's not a solution. It's not a solution.
Right. Where I think I could agree with the governor is we need more money in the classrooms.
Sure.
I could see eye to eye with her on that, because anytime we're talking about policies where, you know, there could be alignment in goals, right? Like fundamentally, I genuinely believe that the Democrats in Lansing want our kids to be educated.
Sure.
I genuinely believe that.
Sure.
So do I. So I think we could probably agree on we both want more money directly in the classrooms educating our kids. But just throwing money at the problem without a strategic plan on getting it directly to the classrooms just isn't going to cut it anymore.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess a couple things there, roads and education. I think you're going to hear a little bit from her. She's going to talk about economic development, and we need to spend more money on economic development to bring corporations into Michigan.
Wait, blowing the $9 billion surplus on it wasn't enough?
Right, and how are we doing on our economy in Michigan, and where's our unemployment rate relative to what it was a few years ago? All those questions are valid questions. But, one of the other big topics, and I think it aligns with what we as Republicans in the House have done, is we've said we have three really basic tenets, right? It's public education, it's infrastructure, roads, and it's public safety.
Yep.
Right? And I'll be interested to see or hear if she brings up, funding for public safety.
Yeah.
Right? Local funding for public
Right.
safety, right? Your police departments, your sheriff's departments, those kinds of things.
Yeah. What are we going to be? What are we going to be doing to recruit and retain more police officers, more law enforcement officers?
Right.
So what do you just big picture? What do you hope? What do you hope that the governor says?
I hope the governor says that I happen to agree with the Republicans' road policy. That's what I hope the governor says. Because I'm going to tell you, the people back home they're tapped out.
Yeah.
They're tapped out. They've paid their taxes. As we know what inflation has been over the last 4 years, costs of goods and services, implementation of the Supreme Court order, and then the revision that we got passed through the House and Senate that's going to make going to dinner more expensive. Right?
Yeah.
In the long run, it's going to be more expensive. At some point, you would hope that instead of taxing and growing government, we operate more efficiently. And my hope is that the governor just takes a position that, okay, we've exhausted the people back home. It's time to move in a direction that's more positive.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the corporate opportunities that she's most likely going to discuss tonight? What do you think about her bringing corporate business back to Michigan, philosophies? What do you think about that?
So let me start by saying bringing business to Michigan is good.
Of course.
Like that's an over. I think we can all agree on that. The question becomes, how do we bring business back to Michigan? But an even more important question is, why have businesses been leaving Michigan? And what do we do to address that part? The problem with trying to bring businesses to Michigan here by bribing them with corporate welfare is we don't have a environment conducive to just natural business growth here right now. And so once the money runs out from the initial like corporate welfare that we're handing out, they're gone again. And so we have to fix the root cause first, and then look at, all right, how are we attracting? Let's attract them that way by just making it a more conducive government for job provider, or more conducive environment for job providers, and then we can say, all right, what else can we do to encourage businesses to come here?
Yeah, I think that, this has turned into a really hot button issue politically between segments of the political right and left. And but depending on who's doing the research, if you look at the data, I've seen as high as 90% of the projected benefit of economic dollars didn't occur,
Right.
right?
Right.
So think that through. 90% of what you said would occur if we spent this money didn't occur. Like, at some point, you have to, say,
Maybe this isn't working.
This isn't working.
Well,
right?
and what's amazing, this blows my mind. You're a business owner. I'm a business owner, so we understand what return on investment means. Well, I don't know if you've seen this yet, because I know you haven't. We were in minority for 2 years, so I know you weren't heavily involved in the negotiations with corporate welfare. But the way the government defines return on investment, when we're talking about corporate subsidies, it is not what is the revenue returned to the government by way of taxes, which you could make an argument that could be it. It is not what is the total economic impact to this community based on this corporate welfare that we're handing out. It is what is the dollar amount match that we would get. So if the government puts in $500 million, how much is this private company going to put in? Are they going to put in $500 million? That is 100% return on investment. That's not how that works. That is no gauge on the viability of that business,
right.
which is what you need return on investment. So anytime you hear somebody preaching about a government welfare or a corporate welfare program that says the return on investment is huge, they're not talking about return on investment. They're talking about percentage match.
Match dollars, right.
Totally different topic.
That's a great point, and that's typical government, frankly. Define the terms as they are most suited to your outcome, right? And that's what you see going on with this corporate welfare. And I just think, again, I keep going back why you and me are here. We're sent here from our district by our citizens and our taxpayers, and I don't see the return, and it'll be really hard to convince me otherwise. But I do think you'll hear the governor tonight talk about how we need more money towards the incentive. I'm going to tell you, you create a climate with low taxation, low regulation, good infrastructure, and friendly departments that are going to help these entities.
Right.
You'll see a movement of economic growth in this state that you haven't seen, maybe arguably, in 20 years.
Right.
I don't have to bribe them.
Crazy idea. Maybe government should just get out of the way.
How about that?
Crazy.
That'd be a great idea, in fact.
So
on lots of aspects.
One of the things that I'm really hoping that I hear from the governor, she genuinely could do this, and I hope she does, but taking an actual, real, honest assessment, where are we as a state today relative to where we were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, even 40 years ago? Like an actual honest assessment. I don't know that I've ever heard a politician do that. Truly, I can't remember a time, because it's the state of the state. She's got to pat herself on the back somehow. But the reality is, we have some work to do.
There's policies that have been put in place over time. I had a business guy say this to me. He said, "We are still living on the belief that the auto industry can bail everything out for the state of Michigan."
Right.
And man, I'd love to be that be true, but it isn't.
Yeah.
That is not what the economy looks like anymore.
Right.
Especially in the state of Michigan. It's huge, it's important in Michigan, but if that's all you're banking on, you're not going to be able to survive. You're certainly not going to be diversified by any means.
Well, and that's the thing. That's actually a good thing. That because it means that we have a more robust economy as far as diversity is concerned. There are more things, right? We have medical in West Michigan. We have Acrisure came to West Grand Rapids recently, and I mean that's a big deal. Then we have the auto industry. Data centers are coming here. There are multiple different things that we can rely on and help improve and develop in order to make Michigan a better state again.
Yeah. I think that we have to get out of the mindset that it's just the auto industry that's going to bail us out of our current economic condition.
Yeah, and don't misunderstand that, right? Like the auto industry is critical for us.
Of course.
It's super important. We love knowing that we are the auto industry capital of the world, that's still how I like to, like, we have Motor City. Like, that is a big identity. We just can't make that our sole focus.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting tonight. You're going to be given the rebuttal?
Yeah, I am. I'll be giving the rebuttal. I'm really, as I have a water bottle in my hand, I'm really hoping I don't pull a Marco Rubio and guzzle a bottle of water halfway through and then totally blow the whole thing. But I think we'll be good.
No, I think you'll be fine. It'll be interesting. Hey, I'm optimistic. I always try to be optimistic. You know, I've heard a few of her State of the State addresses. My hope is that her message is sincere and real, and it's got some substance rather than just talking points.
Yeah, and you know, I've sat through a few of her State of the States, and she does a very good job. What historically what I've seen, and this is one of the things that I expect I'll be touching on in my rebuttal. Historically, it's been like really, really high polling topics. Everybody agrees with. So of course we're going to educate our kids better. Of course we're going to bring jobs back to Michigan, and of course we're going to fix the roads. The challenge is there's a lot of differences between what is good policy that goes along those tracks and bad policy that could still use that same thing as a talking
Well,
point.
yeah, that's the interesting part. We could say all those things, but tell us the actual plan.
Yeah.
Give us the actual plan. And that's why, just jumping backwards to the Republican plan for roads. That was Speaker Hall and his team laid it out, where every dollar would come from, how it would work, the critical necessities of the state of Michigan would remain whole, and we would do it without raising taxes. When the governor came out, I mean, anybody can just say we're going to raise taxes. I mean, that's easy. Yeah, we'll just raise taxes.
Right.
I just don't. The difference to me is clear about the approach to who is the better entities to be leading the state of Michigan into the future.
Yeah.
And
who's better at looting the state?
Yeah,
It's
true.
very clear. There's
Very clear.
one party is going to be better at leading the state.
I
the
always
other
go
party
back
is
to
going
that
to be better
$9
at looting
billion
it.
surplus that we had. 18 months ago we had a $9 billion surplus.
Yeah, call it a hunch. I'll probably touch on that in the rebuttal too.
Well, there you go. Great. I think it's fantastic.
Anything
yeah.
else we need to touch on? You think?
No, I'm looking forward to the next 2 years in the House and the Republicans demonstrating why we're the leadership that Michigan desires.
Yeah.
So I appreciate having an opportunity to talk to you, Bryan.
Yeah. Well, this is great. I love hanging out and catching up with you.
All right. Very good.